Hey, what's going on, guys? The UFC Fight Night card in Austin, Texas on December 2nd has been made official by UFC President Dana White. And what a stacked Fight Night card this is. And we're going to go through all the notable fights in a second. But not only is it a stacked Fight Night card, it's a historic fight card. Because they are doing something on this fight card that the UFC has never done on a Fight Night card before in history. We're going to go through that in a little bit. But the notable fights that were announced, some of these were already rumored to be in the works, but now they are official. We have Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum at welterweight. We have Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo at bantamweight. Then for the co-main event, we have Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. And then the main event, we have Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. What a banger card this is. I absolutely love this Fight Night card. Shout out to the UFC for throwing such an amazing Fight Night card together. It seems like they seem to do that in December every year, have one like amazing Fight Night card. But you have some more good fights on it as well. You have Khalil Roundtree versus Azamat Murzakanov, which we're not really going to talk about. You have Clay Guida and the boys on the card as well. You have Miesha Tate on the card, but I don't really care about those fights. I mean, I care about the Khalil Roundtree fight, but the Miesha Tate and Clay Guida fight I don't really care about. But we're going to stick to the top four fights. I'm going to give you my reaction and early prediction. Starting off with Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. I love this fight. I absolutely love this fight. I was never a huge fan of the Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kelvin Gastelum fight. I thought it was a good fight, but I thought there were better matchups for Shavkat in the division, moving up the welterweight division ladder. But honestly, I don't trust Kelvin Gastelum to make weight. My early prediction for this fight is the fight doesn't happen. I said the same thing for Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kelvin Gastelum. I said my early prediction is it doesn't happen. Now, I said Kelvin Gastelum wouldn't make weight, but Kelvin Gastelum got injured. There were some rumors, maybe it was weight cut issues or getting down to the welterweight limit. He's been fighting at middleweight for so long. When's the last time he's made welterweight? It's been so long since he's made welterweight. We're talking all the way back against Johnny Hendricks at UFC 200. So we're talking 7 years since Kelvin Gastelum has made the welterweight limit. And since then, he's been fighting up at middleweight. He's been comfortable at middleweight. I just find it hard to believe he's going to make welterweight. But if he does make welterweight, this is a banger fight. I hope the fight actually goes through. Sean Brady's been off for a while. He hasn't fought since he got stopped by Belal Muhammad at UFC 280 October of last year. Sean Brady was supposed to fight Jack Della Maddalena. I believe it was on UFC Noche. That fight got canceled because I think Sean Brady was injured, had some type of infection. But now he's fighting Kelvin Gastelum. I think this fight makes a lot of sense. Sean Brady, you look at him right now, he's sitting in the top 10 of the rankings. He's number 8. Kelvin Gastelum's ranked number 11 at middleweight. So this is a big fight, especially when you consider it's the 4th fight down the card. Brady's got excellent grappling. His hands aren't that good. They've been improving, but they're not that good. Kelvin Gastelum has really good grappling and really good striking as well. He's getting up there in age. He's slowing down a bit. I believe his skills are starting to diminish. But if this fight actually goes through and Kelvin Gastelum makes weight and doesn't kill himself, I'm probably going to go Kelvin Gastelum for an early prediction. You know, I'll have to dig into this fight more when we get closer. And it's honestly, this is a toss-up for me because Kelvin Gastelum, he won the fight against Chris Curtis, but honestly, I thought Chris Curtis won that. And without the headbutt, Chris Curtis definitely wins that fight. You go back to the fight before that, he's fighting absolutely stacked competition. Jarrett Cannonier, Robert Whitaker. His last win before Chris Curtis, which is controversial, was against Ian Heinisch, and that wasn't even like a dominant win. So he got outclassed by Cannonier, outclassed by Whitaker, lost to Hermanson in the first round, lost to Darren Till, which honestly I thought he won that fight. Lost to Israel Adesanya, no shame in that. You know, he was the first guy to give the smoke to Adesanya according to his rap song intro on YouTube, but that's living in the past. Uncle Rico moment right there for Kelvin Gastelum. That's back in 2019. That's 4 years ago. So it's hard for me to pick Kelvin Gastelum and be confident, but Sean Brady's striking is not good at all. It's just not that good. Maybe it's improved in the year off, but he's getting stopped on the feet by Belal Muhammad. I'm high on Belal Muhammad. Not at the time I picked against him, but I'm high on Belal. I don't think that loss has aged that badly for Sean Brady. But you're looking at the fights before that. He's beaten Michael Chiesa, and had that been a 5-rounder, he would have lost to Chiesa. He gassed out. So it's hard for me to pick Sean Brady. It's hard for me to pick Kelvin Gastelum. But for an early prediction, I have to go Kelvin Gastelum. Now, moving on to the featured fight on the card, we have Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. What a banger fight this is at bantamweight. You have former flyweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo moving up to take on Rob Font. I love this matchup. I never really liked the idea of Figgy moving up to bantamweight because I didn't think he would find a whole lot of success there. But this is the most optimal matchup for him in his bantamweight debut, and you never know what he's going to look like at bantamweight. You have Rob Font ranked number 8. You have Figgy, who's ranked number 2 in the flyweight division. So this is a fight that gets Figgy right into the mix in the top 10 of the bantamweight division. And you have Rob Font coming off a loss against Corey Sandhagen. He took it on short notice. Fight before that beat Adrian Yanez, which a lot of people didn't expect. I picked Rob Font in that fight. But Rob Font is a really good fighter. He has really crisp boxing. But he's getting up there in age. He's in his late 30s. He's 36 years old, going on 37 years old. And Figgy, he's been cutting weight for a long time. So I'm wondering, what is he going to look like not having to cut that extra 10 pounds? He's in his mid-30s. He's 35 right now. He's coming off a loss against Brandon Moreno where he got TKO'd. He got punched in the eye. His eye swelled up. But honestly, there's a case to be made that Figgy's on a 3-fight losing streak. I thought he lost the Brandon Moreno fight at UFC 270, so 2 fights ago. So in a scenario, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. All 3 of those losses come into Brandon Moreno. But nonetheless, those were great fights outside of the fight where he got rear naked choked in the 3rd round. He wasn't really super competitive in that fight. But I'm wondering, I've been kind of on the side of Rob Font for this matchup for a bit, but I'm wondering, how is Figgy going to look not having to cut that extra weight? There's always been a question mark, but the way Figgy fights, the way he just walks forward and shows no respect to his opponents, that can only work. I think that's only going to work for him at flyweight. He's going to have to be a lot more careful at bantamweight because I think there's a lot higher chance that he gets caught and rocked. But I love this matchup. I absolutely love this matchup. It gets Figgy into discussion without having to take on, an absolute killer. Not that Rob Font's not good, but this is the best matchup for him in the top 10 right now. Outside of maybe Dominic Cruz, which was rumored for a while, even the Pedro Munoz fight, okay, that would have been good, but I think the Rob Font's more winnable. You look at Song Yudong, I would favor Song Yudong. I would favor Marlon Vera. I would favor Piotr Yan, Corey Sandhagen, Cejudo, Dvalishvili, Sterling, O'Malley. I would favor all those guys over Figgy. So I think this is the right matchmaking by the UFC. I think this is the right, matchmaking for Deiveson Figueiredo's career. But does he get it done against Rob Font? I don't know. I wanna pick Figgy, but I'm gonna, for an early prediction, I may change this. I'm gonna go Rob Font. I just think it's going to be tough for Figgy. I have to see how that lack of weight cut is going to affect him because he's not going to be able to walk guys down like he was doing at flyweight, showing absolutely no respect. Otherwise, he's going to get chinned. And Rob Font is really good on the ground. He's really good at stuffing takedowns. He has excellent striking, and he's also super durable. Eventually that durability is going to go away for Rob Font, but think about the beating he took from Marlon Vera. He won the majority of that fight, which is crazy. He won the majority of the fight, but he just kept getting rocked. At one point, he got sweet chin music by Marlon Vera. So Rob Font's not going to go away from someone like Marlon Vera's power. You think he's going to go away from Figgy's power? Maybe, but I doubt it. So I'm going to go Rob Font, and I wish this fight was 5 rounds, to be quite honest. But I'm going to go Rob Font probably by decision, maybe a close, hard-fought decision. I think this will be a competitive fight, and I'm really looking forward to it. Moving up to the co-main event, and supposedly there was some discussion of flipping back and forth between main events, but the co-main event is Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. And this is where we get into the historic part of this fight night card, because this is the first co-main event, non-title, non-main event on a fight night card that is 5 rounds. Maybe I'm mistaken. And somebody correct me. Because the only matchups that I can remember that are non-title, non-main events that were 5 rounds were all on pay-per-view. Okay, you have Renato Moicano versus Rafael Dos Anjos. You have Nick Diaz versus Leon Edwards, or Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler, Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. I don't believe there's been a 5-round non-title, non-main event on a fight night card that has been booked for 5 rounds. And I've been saying it for a long time. I want more 5-round fights when we have important fights to the division, especially, and I'm not saying this fight is one of them, but especially when you have some title eliminators, they should be 5 rounds. Why was Khamzat Chimaev, Kamaru Usman not 5 rounds? But I understand Kamaru Usman took it on short notice, but I was talking in the meantime, why was Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa not 5 rounds? And I knew that was on a pay-per-view, and this fight doesn't necessarily apply to that. This is kind of a weird fight to make 5 rounds, but I want more 5-round fights when we have important matchups. Now, this isn't the important matchup that I'm making it out to be, but I still love the fact that the UFC looks like they're shifting towards, okay, let's have more 5-round fights, because I think when you have some of these elite level fights, it needs to be 5 rounds. I mean, imagine if Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green was the main event. Obviously, it'd be 5 rounds. But then imagine if Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan was the co-main event and it wasn't 5 rounds. That would be an absolute travesty, because that's a great up-and-coming contender fight. I mean, not up-and-coming really, but that'd be a fight that's really close to title contention is what I mean. That's what I mean. I mean, if Arman Tsarukyan beats Beneil Dariush, he's right up there in title discussion, and that'd be a travesty if that was the co-main event and it wasn't 5 rounds. But in terms of Bobby Green versus Dan Hooker, this is perfect matchmaking. I have to applaud the UFC for all across the board for this fight card. This is perfect matchmaking. Dan Hooker, coming off an unexpected win over Jalen Turner, wins via split decision. I thought he won the fight. Before that, he absolutely destroyed the embarrassment of Claudio Puelles. And then before that, obviously, he was on a nasty losing streak. Lost 4 out of his last 5 before that. Got absolutely wrecked by Arnold Allen. Got his arm ripped off by Islam Makhachev. Had a win over Nasrat Haqparast, but then got chinned. Before that, got chinned by Michael Chandler. Lost to Dustin Poirier in one of the best fights of the year. But Bobby Green has had kind of a career resurgence. He took out the dead body of Tony Ferguson. Wasn't looking that good early on, but then got the finish in the 3rd round. And then in his last fight, he main evented against Grant Dawson. A fight that really didn't make any sense at the time and still doesn't make sense. But Bobby Green goes out there and chins Grant Dawson in the 1st round, like 30 seconds into the 1st round. And now he's fighting Dan Hooker. And this is a matchup that honestly is going to propel them up the ranks. To be honest, you look at their current rankings, Dan Hooker's ranked number 9. Bobby Green's ranked number 12. So whoever wins this fight is going to be in a good spot in the division. This is an interesting matchup. This is a fan-friendly matchup. I think this could be fight of the night, to be quite honest. I mean, both guys, really good striking. Both guys prefer to strike. Dan Hooker, say what you will about Dan Hooker. He's been getting a lot of hate over the last, year or two because of his false accusations towards Islam Makhachev and whatnot, and just making outlandish statements. But the guy is super durable and fun to watch. I mean, he's had some of the best fights in the UFC. Honestly, that Dustin Poirier fight is one of the most underrated fights ever in the UFC. And Bobby Green, he's been around forever. I've talked about him for a while. He's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes he looks like he's the elite of the elite. Other times he looks like garbage. Looked good in his last 2 fights. The win over Tony Ferguson doesn't mean all that much. But to go out there and starch Grant Dawson basically with a jab was pretty nasty. And now he's taking on Dan Hooker. I love this matchup. I love that it's 5 rounds. I'm going to have to go with Dan Hooker, though. I think just Dan Hooker has more options. I think he's more well-rounded. I think he has some grappling ability. And Bobby Green, don't get me wrong, he keeps his hands low and he has the takedown defense. But I just think Dan Hooker's a good enough striker where he will find success on the feet. I mean, think about it. Tony Ferguson fought him back in July, okay? And Tony Ferguson was landing on the feet. If the dead corpse of Tony Ferguson is landing on the feet, Dan Hooker's going to be able to beat you up. I think Dan Hooker beats up Bobby Green, maybe finds a finish. Bobby Green's pretty durable. It's very rare that you see Bobby Green getting finished. And throughout the course of his career, he's been KO'd, TKO'd 4 times, submitted twice. But it was against Drew Dober, who has nasty power. But I think Dan Hooker has really good power as well. So I'm actually going to go Dan Hooker by TKO. I'm going to go Dan Hooker by TKO. I think he catches him with a big shot, follows him to the ground, finishes him off with ground and pound. But I hope this fight goes long. I hope it goes into the 4th. I hope it goes into the 5th round. I think we need more 5-round fights, and I love this stylistic matchup because for right now, for Bobby Green and for Dan Hooker, it's now or never. Bobby Green's 37 years old. Dan Hooker is 33, so he's still kind of got plenty of time, but if he loses to Bobby Green, it's going to send him back kind of outside the top 10, and it's really, he's already had ample opportunity to make that push towards a title, and he just hasn't been able to make that next step. Honestly, if Dan Hooker wins, I want to see Dustin Poirier Dan Hooker too. That would be a straight up banger. So I'm kind of rooting for Dan Hooker in this matchup, and I think he gets it done. I'm going to say TKO's Bobby Green. Moving on to the main event, we have Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan, number 4 ranked lightweight versus number 8 ranked lightweight. I love this matchup. I absolutely love this matchup. You have Arman Tsarukyan, who arguably his only loss in the UFC is to Islam Makhachev. I know he has the loss to Mateusz Gamrot. I thought he clearly won that fight. I thought it was borderline a robbery. This has been a guy I've wanted to see in the title discussion for a while, but he hasn't really been able to get there. And this is a fight that should have been booked after the Gamrot fight. Gamrot beat Tsarukyan and went on to fight Dariush, and most people thought it should have been Arman. So Arman really never got his opportunity. Since then, he beat Damir Ismagulov, and then he beat Joaquim Silva, where he got hurt badly and almost finished, but at the end of the day, he dominated that fight. I know a lot of people say, oh, he got exposed there. He dominated the fight outside the moment where he got rocked and hurt badly. And it was a short notice fight. He was supposed to fight Renato Moicano. Actually, it wasn't even a short notice fight, but the Renato Moicano fight got canceled. And then I think like a month and a half turnaround, they booked it for Arman Tsarukyan against Joaquim Silva. So it really wasn't short notice. But nonetheless, He only got rocked. He dominated the fight. He got the 3rd round stoppage. You have Beneil Dariush, who's coming off that loss to Charles Oliveira. He's 34 years old. You know, Beneil Dariush is a great test for any up-and-coming talent. We haven't really seen Arman Tsarukyan like up against, you know, some of the veterans in the lightweight division that are top ranked. We've seen kind of everyone else test it. We haven't. Arman Tsarukyan's the guy that we haven't really seen tested yet. We've seen Gamrot test it. We've seen Fiziev test it. We've seen a lot of these lightweight up-and-comers fight the top-ranked guys and end up getting sent back to the back of the line of the top 10. And I'm really excited to see Arman take on Beneil Dariush. And Beneil, I mean, took on Mateusz Gamrot, destroyed him, you know, won that fight, almost knocked him out, dropped him badly in that fight. Before that, okay, he dominated Tony Ferguson. Before that, he beat Diego Ferreira via split decision. To be honest, Beneil Dariush doesn't have the best resume, but we know how good he is. We know how good he is. He lost to Charles Oliveira, got wrecked in the 1st round against Charles Oliveira. A lot of people were picking Beneil Dariush in that fight. I was like, you know what? I don't trust Beneil Dariush to get it done. Even though he looked good in the Gamrot fight, he also looked bad in the Gamrot fight. He looked very slow. I've said it a million times. I've stole Conor McGregor's line. Beneil Dariush's striking looks like he's stuck in the mud. And against Arman Tsarukyan, who's younger, faster, more athletic. I mean, Tsarukyan's 27 years old. 27 years old compared to Beneil Dariush is 34 years old. Been around for a while. I have to go Arman Tsarukyan in this fight. I think he gets it done over Beneil Dariush. I don't see Beneil Dariush grappling Arman Tsarukyan. I don't see Beneil Dariush outstriking him. It's possible. I do think that Dariush possibly has the better hands technically, but it's going to be a speed disadvantage for Beneil. Beneil moves so slow. So Beneil's basically going to have to win with his hands because Tsarukyan has really good kicks. And I just don't think he's going to be able to get that done. I think he's too slow. I think his boxing isn't that good. He has really good kicks. He has good takedown defense. So I don't see Tsarukyan going out there and taking him down and controlling him. We've seen the level of scrambles from Dariush. But I think Tsarukyan, he'll mix in the grappling. He'll make Dariush think about it. He'll try to take Dariush down. Might even get him down, and then Dariush scrambles back to his feet. But I think Arman will have the better striking, using his kicks on the feet. I think Beneil Dariush will be too slow. And I think this is going to be the end of Beneil Dariush. I think Tsarukyan beats him up, maybe even finishes him. I'm going to say early prediction, I'm going Arman Tsarukyan via finish. Plus, you have to take into account that Dariush is coming off that KO loss against Charles Oliveira back in June. And I know that was a lifetime ago at this point, which is crazy. That doesn't seem like that long ago. But I've never thought Beneil Dariush was this elite level lightweight fighter. You know, I always thought he was good, but, you know, he's getting rocked badly by Jakar Close, okay? You know, his best wins haven't aged that well. The Mateusz Gamrot win, it's matchups make fights. And I think Arman's a far better striker than Gamrot. And I think Arman, even if it strictly stays on the feet, I think Tsarukyan will give him some grappling to think about, and then he'll land on the feet. I'm going Arman Tsarukyan. I'm going to say decision. I'm going to say he doesn't finish him, actually. I'm going to say he doesn't finish him, but I could see Arman Tsarukyan getting a finish. If Beneil Dariush wins this fight, it's going to have to be with his hands. But I just think he's too slow. I think Arman's just younger, faster, more athletic, has more tools in the toolbox. And I just don't think if Dariush is getting outstruck, he's not going to be able to shoot in on a takedown and control Arman Tsarukyan on the ground. I just don't see that happening. So I have to go Tsarukyan, probably by decision. But as the fight gets closer, I'll make a full breakdown and prediction for this fight. Absolutely love this fight card. Have to applaud the UFC for making such an amazing UFC Fight Night card. If you're in Austin, Texas, if you're close to Austin, Texas, you should go to this fight card. That's how good this fight card is. I'm really looking forward to it. But those are all my early predictions. Let me know what you guys think about the card down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.